"Do not look at his face," her escort whispered as the great doors of Orcombe opened. "And whatever you hear in the night, girl, do not go to it. They call him the Beast, and they do not call him so for nothing." Alaric, Duke of Orcombe, heard every word of it from the shadow of the stair, for the hall of Orcombe carried sound the way a cave carries it, and he had learned to hear everything the world said of him without ever seeming to listen. He stood in the dark above the entrance hall and looked down at the girl they had sent him, sold him, rather, for the debt her father owed and could not pay, a debt Alaric had bought up along with half the county's paper without ever meaning it to come to this. And he watched her lift her chin and step over his threshold as though into a lion's den, pale and steady and alone. She was not weeping. That surprised him. The few who had come before her, the matches his aunt kept arranging, in her stubborn hope that a wife might mend what nothing had mended in 3 years, took one look at the scar that ran from his brow to his jaw, and at the black hulk of Orcombe with its shuttered west wing, and wept, and were gone within the fortnight. He had stopped expecting anything else. This one did not weep. She stood in a thin traveling cloak and looked about her at the cold splendor and the dust and the dark, and when the housekeeper murmured that his grace would receive her, she said only, "Then I should like to meet him and have done. Fear is worse in the waiting than in the fact." Alaric came down the stairs into the light. He watched her see the scar. He always watched, it was a kind of penance. He saw her eyes go to it, the ruin of the left side of his face, 3 years old and long-healed but hideous still, the fire's signature written on him forever, and he waited for the flinch, the indrawn breath, the too bright determination not to show what she felt. It did not come. She looked at the scar, and then she looked at his eyes, and she made her curtsy, and she said, "Your Grace, I am Mercy Aldous. My father's debt is real, and I do not pretend otherwise, and I know what I have been sent here to be. But I would ask one thing of you before anything is settled, if I may." "Ask," said Alaric. His voice came out worse than he meant it to, rough with disuse, and the old rasp the smoke had left. "That you tell me the truth of yourself," Mercy said, "rather than let me learn it from servants who whisper at doors. I have been afraid all the way here on the strength of a word beast, and I find I would rather be afraid, if I must be, of something I have seen with my own eyes than of a rumor. Are you cruel, your Grace? That is all I truly need to know. I can bear a great deal that is not cruel." Alaric stood in the cold hall and looked at this girl who had been bought for a debt and who asked him plainly to his ruined face whether he was cruel, and he found he did not know how to answer, because no one in 3 years had asked him anything at all. They had only assumed. "No," he said at last, "I am not cruel, I am other things, but not that." "Then we shall manage," said Mercy Aldous, and something in Alaric that had been closed a very long time shifted, very slightly, like a stone settling in a wall. He did not go near her. He told himself it was decency. A woman sold for a debt should not also be pressed, and he was not the monster the county named. He gave her the finest rooms in the habitable wing and the run of the house and a generous allowance, and left her almost entirely alone, taking his meals in his study among his ledgers and his silence, riding out at dawn before she woke, keeping to the parts of Orcombe she did not enter. He meant to marry her in name because honor and the debt required it, and then to let her live undisturbed, a duchess in a dead man's house, while he went on being what he had become. But Orcombe was not so large as its master's silence, and she was not a woman who could be kept from noticing. She noticed the shuttered west wing. She noticed that no servant would go into it, and that the Duke went into it alone at night, and came out gray. She noticed that he flinched from open flame, that he would let a candle gutter to darkness rather than trim it with his own hand, and she noticed the way he woke, for the hall carried sound and her rooms were not far, the way he woke shouting in the black hours of the night from dreams the whole house had learned to sleep through. The night she disobeyed her escort's warning, Alaric woke as he always woke, torn out of the fire and the smoke with his own cry still in his throat and his heart slamming, and found, for the first time in 3 years, that he was not alone in the dark. She was standing in the doorway of his room in her nightgown with a shawl clutched about her, a candle in her hand, her face white and frightened but her feet planted where they were. "Get out," Alaric said. He heard the rawness in it, the shame. "Get out, you were warned, I do not want." "You were calling a name," Mercy said. She did not move. Over and over, Eleanor, and a child's name, Tom. Her voice was very gentle in the dark. "Who are they, Alaric?" No one had said his name in 3 years either. "Only your grace asterisk, only the beast asterisk." He sat on the edge of the bed with his ruined face in his hands and shook, and the girl he had bought for a debt crossed the forbidden dark of his room and set the candle down, and did the thing no one had done since the fire. She sat beside him, and she waited, and she did not run. "My wife," Alaric said at last into his hands, "and my son, Eleanor and Tom. There was a fire 3 years past in the west wing. I got Tom to the window and out to the men below. I went back for Eleanor. He could not lift his head. I did not get out again with her. I got the scar and I got out and she did not. I carry her from that room in my sleep every night, and every night my hands are empty when I reach the air." The words came in a flood, 3 years damned. "They call me the beast because I am hideous and keep the wing shut and frighten the servants. They do not know it is because I could save only one. That every night I choose again in my sleep, and every night I fail her." Mercy Aldous did not tell him it was not his fault. She did not offer him the cheap coin of comfort. She only reached out in the candlelight and took one of his scarred hands away from his face and held it in both of hers, warm and steady, and said, "You saved your boy. Wherever Tom is now, he is alive because his father went into the fire twice. That is not a beast, Alaric. That is the opposite of a beast. Where is he? Where is Tom?" "With his grandmother," Alaric whispered. "In the south. I could not have him here. I could not have him look at my face or be near the room where his mother." His voice broke. "I sent my own boy away. I saved him from the fire and then I sent him away from me. What kind of father?" "A broken one," said Mercy. "Not a beast. A broken one." And she held his ruined hand in the dark until the shaking stopped, and did not let go, and did not run, and Alaric wept for the first time in 3 years, silently, terribly, while the candle she had brought burned steady and small between them and did not, for once, make him afraid. After that night, something in the black house began, very slowly, to thaw. She did not press him and she did not fuss. She was simply, steadily present, in a way no one had dared to be. She took her meals in his study, uninvited, bringing her book and sitting across from him in companionable quiet until, by degrees, the quiet filled with talk. She learned the shape of his grief the way one learns a difficult country, patiently, without demanding it be other than it was. And Alaric, who had built 3 years of solitude like a tomb around himself, found the walls of it giving way stone by stone before a woman armed with nothing but her refusal to be frightened off. "The West Wing," she said to him one gray afternoon. "It has been shut 3 years. Will you let me open it?" He went cold. "No." "Not to change it," Mercy said, "only to let the light in. A room shut in the dark only grows more terrible, it becomes the whole of the house, but a room the sun comes into is only a room again." She held his eyes. "Eleanor died there, that will always be true, but she also lived there, did she not? She laughed there and held your son there. You have let the worst hour of that wing swallow all the good ones. Let me open one window, only one. And if you cannot bear it, we shut it again and never speak of it." It took him a full week to say yes. When he did, he went with her, because he would not send her into that place alone, and he stood in the doorway of the burned room with his heart in his throat while she crossed to the boarded window and, with the joiner's help, took down the boards, and the gray light of an ordinary afternoon fell into the room where his wife had died, and it was, as she had said, only a room again. Scarred, sad, but only a room with the marks of a life in it. A child's height notched on a doorframe, a woman's initial carved by a fond hand into a window seat, and Alaric stood in the light he had feared for 3 years and found that it did not destroy him. "She carved that," he said, "of the initial. Eleanor, when we were first married, I had forgotten it was there." "Then the wing is not only where she died," Mercy said softly. "It is also where she loved you. You may keep both. You were only ever keeping the one. He turned and looked at her, at this woman he had bought for a debt, standing in the light of the worst room in his house, who had opened it not to wound him but to heal him. And he understood with a quiet and total certainty that he had begun to love her, and that it did not betray the dead to do so, because the love she had woken in him was not the same shape as the love he had buried. It was its own thing, new, and Alina, who had loved him, would not have wanted him to lie forever in the dark. "You were sold to me," he said, "for a debt. It has weighed on me every day. I release it, Mercy. The whole of your father's debt forgiven, torn up, gone. You are free to go. You owe me nothing and never did. The arrangement was monstrous. You may leave Orcombe whenever you wish, with your dowry restored and no shadow on your name." She was very still in the gray light. "You are sending me away," she said, "the way you sent Tom." The words went into him like a blade. "No, God, no, I am trying to give you a choice. You never had one. You came here bought and afraid, and everything that has grown between us grew under that shadow, and I could not bear to think you stayed only because you were sold. I would rather lose you free than keep you in a cage. If you go, I will grieve it to the end of my days, but you must be able to go. Only then can I believe that if you stay because he could not finish it. "Because I love you," Mercy said. "Is that the word you cannot say?" Alaric stood in the ruined room and could not speak at all. "You great broken foolish man," she said, and her eyes were wet and shining, and she was smiling, crossing the scarred floor to him. "You have decided the whole world must be frightened of you, and I have never once been. You have decided you are a beast, and I have watched you go into the dark for a woman you could not save, and carry a boy from a fire, and forgive the one debt that was your hold on me because you would rather lose me than cage me. No beast that ever lived did any such thing. I do not stay because I was sold. I stay because somewhere between the hall where I first saw your face and this room where you have shown me your heart, I came to love you more than anything, and I have no wish on this earth to be anywhere you are not." She reached up, and slowly, so he might stop her, and he did not stop her, she laid her palm against the ruined side of his face, the side no one touched, the side he hid. "Send for Tom," she said. "Let your son come home. Let him see that his father is not a beast but a good man who went into the fire twice. And let me stay and be your wife in truth and help you fill this house with the living again. That is what I choose, freely, with the debt gone and the door wide open behind me. I choose you." Alaric turned his scarred face into her palm and closed his eyes. "Stay," he said, barely a word at all. "Mercy, stay." And he drew her in, there in the light of the room he had feared for 3 years, and kissed her carefully, as a man kisses when he has forgotten he is allowed to, and then not carefully at all, and the gray afternoon light lay soft on both of them, on the scar she did not fear and the mouth that had said her name. And for the first time since the fire the house of Orcombe held in one of its rooms 2 people who were not afraid. They sent for Tom that same week. The boy came up the long drive, and Alaric stood on the steps of his own house in the daylight with his ruined face bare, terrified as he had never been of any fire, that the child would run from him. And the boy climbed down and looked up at his father's scarred face a long moment, and then something moved in the small serious features, some memory older than fear, and he crossed the gravel at a run and flung himself against Alaric's legs and held on with all his strength. And Alaric went down on his knees on the stone and gathered his son into his arms and held him, and could not see for the tears, and Mercy stood in the doorway with her hand pressed to her mouth and let them have it. They were married quietly, and then not so quietly, for the county, which had called him the beast and shuddered at the west wing, found it hard to go on fearing a Duke scene to laugh in his own garden with a boy on his shoulders and a wife on his arm. The scar did not fade, it never would. But the county in time stopped seeing it and began instead to see the man, grave, gentle, fiercely devoted, restored. The west wing they opened room by room, and made new, and filled with light and the sounds of a household living. Each year, on the anniversary of the fire, they walked together into the room where the boarded window had been, now wide and full of sun, and set fresh flowers on the window seat beneath Alina's carved initial, grieving her honestly, keeping her honestly in the daylight where grief could not curdle into darkness. For his wife had taught him the one thing 3 years of solitude never could, that a wound left shut in the dark grows only more terrible, but a wound the light is let into can, at long last, begin to heal. And every night thereafter, when Alaric woke from the old dream of the fire less and less often, as the years went on, he reached out in the dark and found her hand already waiting for his, warm and steady. The hand of the woman who had been sold to a beast, and had found behind the ruined face only a good man in need of one soul brave enough not to run, and had chosen, freely and forever, to stay.